Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for March 31st, 2014. We'll begin with the special order calendar. Decision items. Item number 1, 240-55BZ, 20722 Northern Boulevard, Queens.
Any questions? No. Okay.
Item number 2, continued hearings, 5-28BZ, 664 New York Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right, the applicant made a response. They clarified the traffic counts under the existing condition, and they removed the uses that are not allowed by the board's grant, which is basically the sale of cars. They've included additional landscaping along Winthrop, and they've also clarified the signage that they're proposing. Are there any questions or remaining issues? Yes, Commissioner?
No, just that the proposed site plan has some very vague, barely legible writing on it. I think they should just clarify.
Okay, we can work with them on the drawings. Okay.
New cases, item number 3, 15602BZ, 964 65th Street, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments about the case? This was a parking lot that was used, associated with a car dealership. And since that time, the car dealership has gone. It's in the district, which allows commercial use and has been developed as a bank. And they now want to use this site, which is adjacent to it, for accessory parking. Yes?
Is it technically accessory?
Is it technically accessory?
Well, I mean,
Because it's not at the same zoning lot?
right. I mean, I know the definition says that there's another section of the zoning resolution that otherwise permits it. And, I mean, I know functionally it's accessory, but they mentioned that the two lots have been merged in error in the
Right.
past, and now they're being re-separated. So it's just a technical question as to whether it's truly accessory.
Right. I think that, well, we had the same issue at staff level. We reached out to DOB. As you know, you have situations where you have commercial uses where they can have accessory use off-site.
Right.
And we asked DOB how they address that. And I believe, and my counsel can correct me, but I believe what they would do is for the certificate of occupancy for, let's say, the site before us, they would note, in this case, I guess it's use group 6, which is the use group that is for the Chase Bank.
Right.
And am I right in saying that, John? That would be how they would, so they wouldn't identify it as accessory use, they'd say what the underlying use group is. Any additional conditions to that, which is imposed by the board, which is that we would allow parking for, and only for the bank, could be put in as a part of our conditions and also be put on the COO.
That's fine.
All right, other questions?
I
Yes.
just would want a little clarity on what that piece of property is in the back that they say is being used by the adjacent neighbor. It's, I guess, it looks like a shed is back there or something, but if they could just give us a little more detail on that and whether or not they're planning on using it in the future or just what that is.
Okay.
And on their site plan, when they just say the existing fence, but I really think they should detail what that is. I believe it's a chain link fence with opaque shielding.
Okay. I know that the community board had identified some recommendations as a part of their approval. I think it'd be helpful if the applicant speaks to that. It really has to do with being able to secure and close off the portion of the lot that's in the residential district during hours where the bank is not in session, or not session, but not being used. And I know they particularly wanted to make sure that there was some kind of barricade or ability to close off that space. So if they could explain that to us, it'd be helpful. Okay.
Item number 4, 17407BZ, 1935 Coney Island Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments? It's time to complete construction. As you know, this case was before us, and they haven't proceeded as yet. They've made some changes since the last approval because now it's not under Exxon. Yes, questions and comments?
I had some questions about the garbage pickup.
Yes.
First, about the times of the garbage pickup. They talk about that no garbage will be picked up after 10 PM, but they don't actually tell us when they anticipate garbage in the mornings to be picked up. And also, since they've reconfigured the site a bit, where they've put the dumpster seems to sort of be down this narrow alley or aisle, and I'm wondering how they anticipate a truck or, whatever vehicle it is that's going to pick up that dumpster and dispose of the garbage, how that actually works. And they've also moved their building closer to the lot line on Coney Island Avenue, so if they can give us maybe a streetscape of what that actually looks like, that would be great.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
I had some concerns about the canopy and the lighting. They have an adjacent residential building on Avenue P, and they give the foot candles in the lighting plan, and adjacent to the property line, some of them seem very high, like 25-foot candles, and usually we're used to seeing something close to 0. So I was wondering if there was a way that they could shield that.
Okay. Yes.
Similar to that, immediately next to the site is the home, and there's that big Marlboro sign. Which, do they really need that sign, like, right smack up against the house?
Okay.
And did they give us evidence that the agreement with the transit authority to move the bus stop
Is still in effect?
is still in effect?
They have not provided us that. We can ask them.
We should know that because that also involves the closing of the curb cut.
Right, and in fact, if they cannot relocate that, the bus stop, then it's actually going to change the operations of their site. Okay.
New cases, item number 5, 17707BZ, 886 Glenmore Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right, so applications for an amendment. As you know, the board had granted a front yard waiver when they came to us a few years ago. And now they're asking for still the front yard waiver, but they're enlarging the building, and they believe that the site is eligible for the predominantly built-up FAR. And as a result of that, they're proposing a 3-story, 3-family home. It's a 2-family home. Are there any concerns?
As long as that's the only waiver, they're not changing the waiver needed, right?
They're not changing the waiver. Now, actually, when I looked at this, I did have a suggestion, though. As you know, let me see if I can find the plans. They have a front yard waiver on one side, but not on the other side. But actually, along that street, they're proposing a building which matches up to the adjacent buildings. All of those are on the lot line, and this one is actually going to be set back by 18 feet. I just thought from an urban design perspective, it's better if these buildings actually align. And what it would mean is that really for the board to grant them a front yard waiver. So I'd like the board to take a look at that and see if, I think it's a better design solution. If you look at the neighborhood, there's not a strong front yard context. A lot of the buildings in the corners are actually built at the lot lines. So I don't think it'll disturb character, but I think it'll actually enhance it. And it'll also allow what would be this site's side yard to be more functioning as a rear yard and to be similar to the adjacent home's rear yards. So I think it's a better response. So I'd recommend that and like the commission to look at it.
Appeals calendar, decision items, item number 6, 21513A, 300 Four Corners Road, Staten Island.
Well, we had closed this case at the last hearing, but the applicant had reached out to the City Planning Commission, and we received a memo from them, just, I think, reiterating the Buildings Department's position, and I think the board's thoughts about it as well. So that's been entered into the record.
Fine.
Okay, any issues? All right.
Continued hearing items, item number 7, 140 and 14111A, 6917 38th Avenue, Queens.
They made a response. Commissioner Otley-Brown, I know that you had some questions last time about some inconsistencies.
Yes, and it seems like they did take care of some of those numbers It doesn't exactly reconcile with the resolution, but it's much more detailed, so it explains why it deviated.
Okay. Other questions or concerns?
They removed their Class 1 ECB hazardous violations, so I was pleased to see that.
Okay. Any other concerns? Okay, we had reached out to DOB, and we're waiting for them to respond back as well. I think, Commissioner Martinez, you had some concerns because the drawings or the permit was modified. Do you remember this? That it was a two buildings?
Yes,
Right,
because
so
they merged the two buildings.
they merged into one building, so we've reached out to DOB to take a look at that.
Right.
Item number 8, 296-13A, 280 Bond Street, Brooklyn.
All right. We've received responses both by the owner, the appellant, and the Buildings Department. Questions and comments, concerns? I think that the record has become more full. And I think, for me at least, the area that it would be helpful if the owner of the site does a few things, which is respond to Mr. Lester's latest set of issues regarding the evidence that they provided, and also if they could perhaps provide us with a table where they really show year by year the evidence that goes with that. I think the area that's, the time period past 2010 to 2012 is probably the weakest in terms of the evidence that they provided of, that the use has been continuous. Yes, comments? Yes.
I was not at the hearing on January 14th,
Okay.
but I have a little bit of a problem with the bankruptcy case and the information that was on record in front of that governmental entity stating that there was no business being conducted on that site or any business to speak of, and then the information that they have contradicted and provided to DOB stating that there was business on that site. And so it calls into question the credibility, so that was one of my issues. And it's also an issue for Department of Buildings as well. I would like them to explain why they have cast out that evidence and accepted the evidence that was given to them saying that there was business activity on that site when they have already spoken to another area of government and stated there wasn't, especially given the fact that we have had previous cases where Department of Buildings didn't seem as ready to accept contradictory evidence that was given to a governmental forum previously.
Okay, I think when I pointed out that the owner should respond, I wanted them to respond to this particular issue as well and explain that. So we can ask DOB as well as the owner to respond to that. Other questions or comments? Okay.
Zoning calendar, decision items, item number 1, 9413BZ, 1111 40th Avenue, Queens.
We've received DEP sign-off, so we can move to decision.
Item number 2, 10313BZ, 81 Jefferson Street, Brooklyn.
We're still awaiting DEP sign-off for this case.
Item number 3, 28113BZ, 350 370 Canal Street, Manhattan.
Any questions on this case? Okay.
Item number 4, 29113BZ, 842 Lefferts Avenue, Brooklyn.
Any concerns about this case? We weren't waiting for anything. Okay.
Continued hearing items. Item number 5, 130-13BZ, 1590 Nostrand Avenue, Brooklyn.
The applicant revised their statement of facts and findings since last go-around. They also provided us an analysis of how many, what would be the parking demand, so I think that was very helpful to me at least, because I had that question. They talked a little bit more about the continuous use. Other questions? Any outstanding issues? Yes.
No, just with regard to the parking study says 40 spaces, the statement says 35. They would just
Yes.
reconcile that. That's
Right.
fine, but overall, I found the parking study to be helpful. That's about it.
Any other issues? They're not providing signage on the street behind, it's only on Nostrand, and we could limit it to C1 signage. And what I would recommend is that area at the back where they really don't know what they're doing with, I think we should limit that to warehouse use for now, because the entire calculation and analysis is just based on the front portion being used for retail. Okay, because we really haven't analyzed what that would mean if that's retail, and whether people would be coming and entering the site from the street, which is really more residential. So here it's much more clear, Nostrand's a larger street and has more of a commercial character.
There was the question of the additional lot that years ago
Yes,
they
they,
acquired, demolished the house and developed more parking, and they say that they're going to separate that out again.
yes.
They could bolster that with some evidence that
They-
they're moving forward in that regard.
They did provide us with the form which is submitted to finance.
Okay.
Exactly. They provided that for the record, which shows the meets and bounds and brings it back to the variance lot.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Item number 6, 17913BZ, 933, 939 East 24th Street, Brooklyn.
All right, questions, comments? They've reduced the height of the building and reduced the height of the perimeter. Any remaining issues? Okay.
Item number 7, 25213BZ, 1221 East 22nd Street, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments?
I still
Yes.
have an issue with that canopy that's in the side yard. I know that they put the standard DOB note on the plan, but they're still showing it on their elevations and in their section, and they indeed say that it's a permitted obstruction. If they could either put the standard DOB note on all of their plans, that would be fine, or dot in that, that canopy. But I really want DOB to focus on that, make sure that it's
Allowed.
allowed, correct?
To review it. Okay, other comments? Yes.
I know that they're relying on their building height as being in, the neighborhood character based on the building 2 doors down. I was just wondering how they derive the building height of that building, from a
Okay.
C of O, or, where was the information from?
Okay. I know you had some concerns about the attic and what was being counted. I just have concerns because they've shown all the space, which is double height, and it really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because it didn't really integrate with the floors below. So this is an R2 district. Any space which is below 8 feet will not be counted as floor area. It just seems that you may want to just extend the floor instead of having all these double height spaces and cutouts. There's one that, for example, is a cutout that looks into the restrooms and above the tub. I mean, it just really didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I didn't understand what that was. Very, very random. And I think there's a better way to do this. This is a large building. They're asking for 1.08 FAR. I think they should be looking at ways to, in fact, reduce the overall effect and retain the square footage they want instead of inflating the envelope of the building. So I remain concerned about that. Okay.
Item number 8, 270-13BZ, 288 Dover Street, Brooklyn.
Questions and comments? Commissioner Martinez, I know you had raised some.
Right, they gave us a very nice explanation of that the Esplanade is actually a street, and they've added landscaping on both frontages, so I didn't have any other concerns.
Okay, good. Any other questions? All right.
Item number 9, 27313BZ, 321 East 60th Street, Manhattan.
All right. We asked them to bolster their A finding and also clarify the premium costs. Are there questions on that? Yes.
No, I thought the additional information on the crane was helpful. I think my only remaining question has to do with the parking. They say they don't need a parking waiver, but they say 9 spaces will be offered to residential tenants, and then they say it will be utilized as public parking. I don't know if that's contradictory. Can they do both?
I think what they noted was that there's a section in the zoning resolution, and maybe part of the parking text that took place recently, which allowed spaces that are not being used to be used outside, but we can ask the applicant to clarify that to us.
I mean, I sort of thought that that's what it might be. They'll offer it to the tenants. If the tenants don't want it, then they'll just make it public parking. But that was just not clear from the statement.
Okay. Other questions and comments? All right, I think it'd be helpful if the architect could just give us a little better explanation of what is the construction method they're using, because they're not providing a crane. They've talked about that it would be, I guess, cast in concrete, and it just really wasn't clear to me what the staging would be like, and if they could explain that. And I think most of the costs that they've identified seem reasonable and are related to the unique conditions of the site, but I did have some concerns about them throwing everything in the kitchen sink into this, including additional paving. I understand this building sets back. There's a little more portion that they have to pave because, well, I think what they've called plaza, but I don't know if that really elevates itself to a real hardship, as well as the construction fence. I think those are maybe legitimate construction costs, but I don't necessarily see them as premium costs. I guess those were my comments. Any other comments? All right. Okay, good.
New cases, item number 10, 17813BZ, 2141 Mott Avenue, Queens.
This is a new special permit for a case that's already been before the board where the term expired. It's for McDonald's. They previously had an accessory drive-through, and they want to essentially continue to use it in the same way. Are there questions? Yes.
I just had a question about the signage. I think they said they had 40 square feet. When you look at the photos, and it's definitely more than that. And there's, I think, like the pylon sign they didn't include, there's a lot more signage.
Okay.
There's signage on the menu board, there's signage on the fence. I had the same question, just what's included in their sign and also.
Okay. Other questions or concerns? I think it'd be helpful if they just speak a little bit to the buffering that they're providing along the lot line that's adjacent to residential. They've shown it as some landscaping, but they haven't really given any dimension to it, and it's just not clear if they're providing a fence as well. And if they are providing a fence or a wall, are these screening methods enough to reduce any sound impacts? This is a case where it's a 24-hour operation, so if they could just speak to that as well. Dora, you have something?
I actually had a question similar to that because it's a 24/7 operation. About how many customers do they have coming through that drive-through, like between midnight and 6, because it is close to the residential?
Okay. And since it's an operation, I think they'd probably be able to give us some actual numbers. Okay. Any other questions?
Item number 11, 250-13BZ, 3555 White Plains Road, the Bronx.
All right, questions and comments? This is a new building, and I think if you look at the site plan, you'll see that a portion of that site is in the residential district, and it's like a split district. And it's possible that when they filed at the buildings department, because they have permits for this, they may have applied section 7711, which allows you to extend it. So I think what would be helpful for us if they could just speak to that issue about the split zoning district, as well as provide us with DOB drawings so we can see that we're replacing commercial space, replacing PC for what would otherwise be commercial space. Are there any other questions or comments? All right.
Item number 12, 275-13BZ, 404, 406 Broadway, Manhattan.
All right. Any questions or concerns about this case?
I think they have a stop work order related to the two-story rear addition, and I think the PCE is in a portion of that addition. If they could just explain the status of that stop work order.
Right, they should clarify that to us because they've shown on their site plan as well that somehow it's going to be a 3-story addition in the rear. I'm not even sure that's allowed. The PC, I believe, is on the ground floor and may be able to extend in that portion of the rear. The other 2 floors really should not be shown on any of our drawings because it's not really before us. I think in responding to that, they could clarify your concern as well. Okay, other questions? Okay, yes. This is actually within a historic district. They claim that they provided a certificate of no effect into the record, but I did not see it. And it's also unclear if they have reviewed anything regarding signage. Yes, just 1 minute. Okay, anyway, they can provide that to us and also explain whether the signage was approved by landmarks.
Just had one question, because they did mention that this particular style of yoga takes place in a 105-degree classroom.
Hot yoga.
Hot yoga.
Yeah, hot yoga, I've heard of it before.
Never tried it, Chris?
No, I have not. I have not. It would not be a good
It's
time.
intense.
And I have a red face a lot of times anyway, but no. It really has to do with the
Yeah.
fact that portions of the building are sprinkled and portions are not. I really just want to know, how do they achieve the heat? Is there some additional heating equipment that's supplied to the place? And if so, is there any additional fire hazard?
Okay. All right.
Item number 13, 285 13BZ, 495 Flatbush Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right, questions and comments? And we have any issues with this?
I guess the allowable signage is 3 times per frontage for each business. Is that correct? Because there's this huge fat Albert sign, which is using the same frontage.
Right, right. There is text in the zoning resolution that speaks to the fact that you could have establishments and it functions like a zoning lot. I'm not sure how DOB has interpreted that when you have uses at multiple levels. But I think in this case, we're talking about, if this is on actually first and second floor, why don't we ask them to just clarify that to us? Okay? Any other questions? All right.
Item number 14, 286-13BZ, 2904 Voorhees Avenue, Brooklyn.
All right. They're asking for yard waivers as well as an FAR waiver and parking to allow them to enlarge a very small building at this location. It seems they are somewhat constrained. It is a very small home, and in their analysis of other homes in the area, definitely is much less than what other homes are. Questions and comments?
I just had 2 questions. If they could explain if the windows on the adjacent property are compromised in any way for light and air. I guess they're coming up against the first floor windows in that building. And then secondly, if they could clarify exactly what's happening on the 29th Street side. They talk about an existing patio and grass area and landscaping, and then they've got a new curb cut, but it appears that that's all off of their property. It's not, within their property line. So if they could explain whether or not that they are taking that property over, or is, what is exactly happening there?
Okay. Other comments or questions? All right. I think that if they could just justify their floor area ratio waiver, I know that this home needs to expand, but as of right, they could have a home that's, I think, close to 1,400 square feet. They're proposing 2,000 square feet, and if they could just explain why they need the additional FAR. They did an analysis of other homes, but for some reason they limited themselves to corner lots. I don't think that seems reasonable. If you're going to look at other homes for the FAR waiver, you should be looking at all the lots in the area. So I had one concern about that, and the second one had to do with the streetscape. If you see the other homes in the area, they all tend to have pitched roofs. I think they could easily just put a pitched roof on it, and I think it'd be more harmonious. Okay.
Item number 15, 310-13BZ, 459 East 149th Street, Bronx.
All right, questions and comments? Yes, questions and comments? Yes, sorry, Dara, please go ahead.
They talk about how the programmatic needs will suffer if they have to move the faculty lounge in from that corner in the back. However, they don't really discuss any programmatic needs in detail at all, so we really don't know what part of the program would suffer.
I agree. I think that in general, what they're asking for is very modest, and you would think it's a very straightforward case, but I agree with you, their papers were not very clear about the amount of square footage they needed, what would happen if they cannot use that space. And I think another question is that they could just explain to us why you have this floor where all the office use is being placed in the district where you would actually allow for the school, or in this case, college, and is there a reason why they've assigned this space for the college, and therefore you need a variance versus being able to be placed where the offices and not have any variance? So maybe it's an issue that, this building's under construction, and it's a part of a larger plan, and maybe there's just limitations given where they want the office space, but I think they should at least explain that.
I would
Yes,
agree.
Vice
I
Chair.
think what they're seeking appears to be modest. It has support from some elected officials. But I found the papers to be highly repetitive. Clearly, they were not proofread. There's just some jumbles of sentences. It was, they're not of a standard that we should accept.
Okay, other comments? Yes. I know that they talk a lot about the special permit that's available to school, and they're not, it's a college, so it doesn't have that. They don't need to prove it to such a degree to us, but I thought it was somewhat helpful because it does talk about why the location is important for the college itself, and they have looked at other sites. So it didn't speak to, it spoke to more to the locational aspect of the programmatic need. But I think.
It did.
Yes.
It did. I found that analysis of the 7319 analysis, I felt actually muddied the waters as opposed
Okay.
to making it clear. If they wanted to talk about the difficulty of obtaining an adequate location, they could just do that in a simple paragraph.
I do agree with you. I think it was unnecessary to speak to all the findings. I agree. Okay, any other comments on that? All right.
This concludes the March 31st executive session.